Alright, good evening ladies. In today's video we're going to be discussing Coinbase stock. Now I did a video on Coinbase stock already and I went through their entire different potential revenue streams. However, upon digging into their numbers a bit further, upon actually calculating what I think they're going to be making in revenue by 2025 when I think crypto will peak, I realized that their revenues were actually considerably higher. So in today's video I want to break down those numbers and show you what I think Coinbase will be earning in revenue over the next coming years, and from that revenue metric we can come up with a fair value for Coinbase stock in the 2025 bull cycle. Now after breaking down these numbers, I went ahead and sold all my MicroStrategy stock, and that was a very large position for me. I sold all my MicroStrategy stock and put it all into Coinbase stock. The reason being, I think MicroStrategy stock and Coinbase stock have a similar risk profile. So Coinbase is kind of diversified across the entire crypto industry, whereas MicroStrategy is, it's just a Bitcoin proxy. So it will slightly outperform Bitcoin, but I think Coinbase is going to massively outperform Bitcoin, and I'll show you why in this video. So in today's video, we're going to be using revenue to come up with a valuation rather than using earnings for Coinbase, because the earnings for Coinbase are extremely erratic, as you can see. Like some years they make a huge loss and some years they make a fortune, and that's obviously just to do with the crypto cycles. So trying to value off profits is just a loser's game. So anyone who's valuing Coinbase off earnings is probably going to way undervalue them in the bear market. Like right now it's probably undervalued, but they're going to way overvalue them in the bull market, so they can be our exit liquidity. But we're just going to value Coinbase off its revenue, and its revenue is a little bit less volatile than its earnings, obviously. But just keep in mind that anyone who's valuing Coinbase off earnings might even come up with a higher price target. So Coinbase might actually reach a higher price target than what I mentioned in today's video. So since Coinbase was founded in 2013, I believe, pretty much all of its revenue came from transaction revenue. So anytime someone bought or sold any cryptocurrency on their exchange, they would take a little cut of that transaction. And at the moment it's averaging for retail about 1.3% of that transaction fee is going directly to Coinbase, which is considerably high actually. Coinbase have been really adamant and really trying to diversify their revenue, because in a bear market volatility goes really low, so not many people are buying and selling crypto. And on top of that, the prices of crypto have come down a lot, so their revenues really take a massive hit in the bear market. But they've actually really successfully diversified their revenue streams, which we'll discuss in today's video. But now transaction revenue is only making up 41% of their total revenue, whereas it used to be like well over 80%. Here you can see their transaction revenues over the last few quarters, and you can see their transaction revenues are now in Q3 2023 actually less than their total subscription and services revenue. So if you want to find out further detail on the subscription and services revenue, I highly recommend you watch my last video. I really break it all down in considerable detail. But just to summarize some of them, Coinbase One is their subscription model, and Wall Street loves subscriptions. As I've mentioned before, they love the idea of people paying $10, $20 for Coinbase. I think it's $30 a month for Coinbase One, because that's a recurring revenue stream and it makes it much easier to value into the future that revenue stream. So before we actually break out these numbers, what I think they're going to be earning in 2025, we should have some honorable mentions of the base chain. This is Coinbase's new chain, a layer 2 built on the Optimism stack. And just to mention, I don't really think this is going to be a real needle mover in revenue terms for Coinbase. It's good promotion for Coinbase. It grows the overall crypto pie, but they are going to be making money from it, but it's not going to be substantial money from it. And as well as that, the other potential revenue stream, which isn't really going to move the needle for Coinbase, but is just another honorable mention, is that we all know that the Bitcoin ETF is coming, and BlackRock, as well as all of the other institutions that are filing for Bitcoin ETFs, they're all going to be using Coinbase to custody their Bitcoin for the ETFs. And when you actually break out the numbers for this, the custody fee is extremely low, and it's not going to result in billions in revenue for Coinbase, maybe a few hundred million. So it's nothing to sneeze at, but I haven't included it in my revenue projections. So one of Coinbase's new products, which actually will move the needle considerably, is what they've just been filing for, which is the crypto futures product. Now, they're not making revenue from this yet, but by 2025, this could be a considerable revenue generator for them. For example, let's compare it with other futures platforms. Binance, for example, which is, it's a big platform, but nowhere near the size of Coinbase. Its estimated revenue, now, they're not a public company, so this might not be totally accurate, but I just pulled this from the web, but their estimated revenue was 200 million last year in a bear market. Now, let's look at Binance revenue, Binance futures revenue. So first, Binance's total revenue was 4 times that of Coinbase's total revenue. So Binance earned $12 billion, while Coinbase earned $3 billion last year. But how much of Binance's revenue came from futures trading? Well, $2 billion of that $12 billion came from futures trading. So $2 billion for Binance. Binance makes 4 times as much money as Coinbase. So let's divide that 2 billion by 4 to get an estimate of what Coinbase could be earning from their futures trading platform. And that gives you $500 million. Now, they're probably not going to be earning that straight away. It might take a while to get people into the futures trading platform. But that's what I'm going to be using for my projections. So you can write that off completely if you want, or kind of come up with your own thesis of how much Coinbase could potentially earn from their futures platform. Alright, so let's actually dive into my computer and come up with this price target. Alright, so this is my valuation targets for Coinbase stock. Obviously we have them blacked out just not to spoil the fun. Let me just explain what's going on here, because obviously it looks a little bit confusing. So these are the years across the top. These are the actual figures for 2023, and this is my bear case, base case, and bull case. So the first line item we got is the average Bitcoin price. So the average Bitcoin price in 2021, something like 45k, maybe 40k. The average Bitcoin price in 2022, about 30 grand, same in 2023, maybe a little bit lower actually. Let's make that 25k, because I think that's actually a little bit more accurate, because it's only gone up in the last few months. And in the bear case scenario, I think Bitcoin in 2025 at the peak of the next bull run will average around 90 grand. In the base case, I think 140 grand. And in the bull case, 220 grand, which I don't think is going to happen. So you can kind of choose whichever you think is the most likely will be the more correct price target for what you think, obviously. It's because we're going to base the Coinbase revenue off the Bitcoin price. It's going to help us come up with the valuation. So the first thing we're going to look at is the transaction revenue. So this is the actual figures for transaction revenue in 2023. I just prorated them out to a full year, obviously, because 2023 is still ongoing. But this is the pro rata figures for 2023, 1.29 billion in transaction revenue. All right, so let me show you how I'm going to try and come up with a figure for the transaction revenue that Coinbase will earn in 2025. So first we can see that in 2023, the average Bitcoin price was 25k, and from that they managed to make $1.3 billion. So obviously if Bitcoin's price goes up to 90 grand on average in the next bull market, then their transaction take rate is going to remain the same. So obviously the transaction revenue is going to have to go up. So all we have to do is say the Bitcoin price is 3.6 times higher. So the transaction revenue is going to be 3.6 times higher. But we have to take into account that in reality, in a bull market, the volatility of crypto is much, much greater, essentially meaning there's a lot more trades and a lot more transactions happening. So we should realistically add some sort of boost to this. So let's say add like 20%. It could be more than 20%. It could be 50% more volatility, more trades happening. But let's just try and be conservative. So doing that, we've come up by saying there's 25% more volatility. The Bitcoin price is 3.6 times higher. We come up with a transaction revenue of $5.8 billion in the bear case. Let's do the exact same thing for the base case and the bull case and see what figures we get. Okay, so now we have the transaction revenues in the bear case, base case, and bull case. Let's work out the other revenues. Okay, so the biggest other potential revenue stream for Coinbase is probably the futures revenue. And we said in 2023, if they had this product already, they'd probably be earning about $500 million. So just for this, we're not adding any volatility multiplier. We're just going to say, okay, this is when the price is 3 times higher, this is going to be $1.5 billion. When the price is 5.6 times higher, it's going to be 2.8 billion. And when the price is 8.8 times higher of Bitcoin, it's going to be $9.3 billion of revenue. So obviously a huge revenue driver. Okay, so next line item is the stablecoin revenue. Now, stablecoin revenue is going to be a little bit more stable, no pun intended, but it will grow with the different price targets, but not as much as the futures revenue or the transaction revenue. The blockchain rewards, that's completely tied to the price of Ethereum and Solana and any other staked services that Coinbase are offering. They just take a 25% cut of all the staking rewards, so it's completely tied to actually the price of Ethereum and Solana and any other coins that can be staked in the platform. So yeah, we did multiply by these different multipliers. And then the other revenue, these are again just the different ones here: interest income, custodial fee revenue. They're not adding huge amounts, so I didn't want to break them down in too much, and they're not getting multiplied as drastically as the other ones. They're just a little bit more stable as well. Okay, after doing all that, we can see what the potential revenues for Coinbase are in the next bull market. So this is the real figure for Coinbase in 2023, $2.87 billion that they made. And in our bear case for 2025, they're going to be making $10 billion. In the base case, they're going to be $19 billion. And in the bull case, they're going to be making $40 billion. So the next thing you have to come up with is the PS ratio. So I showed you this before, but the average price to sales ratio for Coinbase. Okay, as you can see, this is the average price to sales ratio. And as you can see, in the bull market, it was like all through 2021, it remained at a price to sales ratio of 10. So I'm kind of assuming in the next bull market, a price to sales ratio of 10 is warranted. Now, it did get to much lower. It got to like, 2 or 3 in the depths of the bear market, and right now it's at about 6. So I don't think 10 is completely egregious, especially when you consider that it was actually higher than 10 at certain points in the last bull market, and it's already at 6 of a price to sales ratio, and it almost almost hit 10 again recently. So the current price to sales ratio, as we said, is a 7. Let's say in the bear case it also gets a 7. And in the base case, it gets to 10. We saw 10 is probably the fair amount. Now you kind of have to, this really makes a big difference to the valuation for Coinbase. So whatever numbers you put in here are going to obviously have a massive impact on the price targets. So kind of keep that in mind before I show you the different market caps and price targets for Coinbase. Okay, so let's start revealing this as we go. So 2022 and 2023 doesn't need to be blacked out. We already have that. So right now the market cap's sitting at roughly around $21 billion, as we know, and the price is 88 bucks. Now in the 2025 bear case, let's say we only have a price to sales ratio of 8, which is, that's definitely very conservative. It's probably going to be at least 10, if not higher. But if we use a price to sales ratio of 8 in the next bull market, what's the market cap going to be? The market cap is going to be $82 billion. So we're going to have a stock price roughly what the all-time high was at $340, and that would be roughly a 4x from here. So the current stock price 88, going up to 344, about a 4x, so slightly outperforming Bitcoin in that scenario. Now let's move on to the base case. Now let's actually just show you what happens if we use a more realistic price to sales ratio of 10. Then we get a solid outperformance of almost 5. A price multiple of 5, whereas Bitcoin only did a 3.6x. Now moving on to the base case, we get a market cap of $189 billion using a price to sales ratio of 10 again, and that gives you a stock price of $796, and which is a multiple of almost 10x, as we can see, 9x. So whereas Bitcoin only did a 5.6x, you actually get a 9x. And you can adjust this however you like, if you think it's lower, if you think it's higher, but that's what the numbers are showing. But that's what I think, price to sales ratio of 10, very likely in my opinion. So a 9x for Coinbase in the base case, what I'm expecting essentially. Now in the bull case, the bear case I don't think is likely, the bull case I don't think is likely, but let's just show the numbers anyway. In the bull case, we get a market cap of $581 billion using a price to sales ratio of 15. Now, price to sales ratio of 15, that's very high, but let's just see what numbers we get anyway. That gives you a stock price of $2,400, and that gives you a multiplier of 27x or 30x. So Bitcoin's only going to give you a 9x in that scenario, but Coinbase stock would give you a 30x. And if we just change this to a 10, which is the more conservative, you're still looking at an 18x. So massive outperformance over the Bitcoin price, almost double, more than double. The other thing I'll mention is that I do think these particular multipliers on the volatility are conservative, because in the last bull market, Bitcoin went from topped out at 20k up to 69k, so like a 3.5x, whereas Coinbase's revenues went 12x. So these could even be 2 or 2.5, you know, they could be like just insane. And obviously you're getting crazy valuations then. You're getting 13x, 6.5x and 26x as opposed to whatever that was there before. The last couple of things I'll mention is that Coinbase's current market cap, it's not really 21 billion, it's more like 15 billion, because at the moment on their balance sheet they have about $5 billion in net assets. So what you're actually paying for the company is 20 billion minus 5, the 15 billion. The other thing that's coming up for Coinbase is basically no one's talking about it, is the base chain. Like I'd say there's a high probability that there's going to be an airdrop of a base token at some point over the next couple of years, which is going to be massive publicity for Coinbase, will also make them a good bit of money, but obviously that's not included in these revenue projections whatsoever. But as you can see, just using quite conservative numbers, in my opinion, like you might think these aren't conservative, in that case kind of use your own figures in your head and come up with your own valuation, but I think these are quite conservative numbers, and using these numbers we're able to show that Coinbase should easily outperform Bitcoin in the next cycle. And it's quite obvious that Coinbase has a similar risk profile to Bitcoin. So unless you want, like I obviously still hold Bitcoin because of all the other nice properties about Bitcoin, but from a purely financial perspective, Coinbase stock seems like a better buy than Bitcoin or Ethereum, in my humble opinion. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the thumbs up button. See you in the next one. Cheers.